everyone, so this video I've decided to do something quite different from what I usually do. I'm just going to say sorry for the light features. Unfortunately today is, as you get, well, you can't really see outside, but it's an incredibly dull day. It's raining and I probably chose the wrong day to do this, but this is the only day this week that I'm probably going to get free. So unfortunately we have to put up with this, and I don't obviously have the brightest lights, so again, apologise for the features, light settings wise, but what can I do? Don't answer that question. Anyway, first off I want to thank all the people who subscribed, liked any content that I've put up so far. Checked YouTube this morning and I'm now on 101 followers, so, well, followers, subscribers, you get the idea. So thank you all for that. Yeah, so anyway, today's video is going to be quite different. Basically no Eurovision related material at all. And this is a very important thing for me because it's something I identify as myself. So this video is going to be based on asexuality and the broader spectrum within it. So basically the video will lay out as I'll talk about asexuality in general, what it's like within the LGBT umbrella, etc. And then I'll just go on to my own personal story. I feel like it needs a lot more awareness, and the idea of this video, my friend kind of inspired me, and that's my inspiration for this, only because she's not really, she's not as educated on the issue, and it's through me that she's more aware of things now. But I feel like it needs more discussion to it, so this is my take on it. So yeah, here goes. Okay, so asexuality basically is, the best way I could say it is literally a lack of sexual attraction to people. And when I mean people, I mean however anybody identifies. So they may be male, they may be female, they may be non-binary, they may be agender, it doesn't matter. No matter how anybody identifies, asexuals don't face sexual attraction at all. So, for instance, when I was at college, my friends and I, say we were, because I went to a mixed college, say there was this guy that was walking past, and my friends were literally thirsty as AF half the time, and they'd be just literally flailing on the floor and then going, oh my god, he's so hot and whatever. And there'd be me just sitting there thinking, where, and it didn't matter who it was, whether it was male, female, whatever, it was the exact same for me. And that's pretty much how we feel about things. So obviously it's not a choice, it's just how we feel towards this thing. We just, no, it just doesn't happen for us. So yeah, basically that's probably the best way I could say it. It's not the same as having a low libido, like sexual drive. Asexuals can have their sexual drive and enjoy sex, but just don't feel sexually attracted to the person. And it's not the same as not choosing to have sex or, have a sexual relationship with somebody. That's a totally different thing altogether. Like not having sexual activity at all, that's like celibacy and abstinence. Totally different thing. So that's basically the best way I could put it as a definition. So I'm going to move on to asexuality within the LGBT umbrella. It is a part of the LGBT umbrella. If anyone that says it doesn't, they can fling themselves into the sun, because chances are they're probably not asexual themselves. It is, as I said, it is a part of it. There's shit tons of debates, and excuse me for my language, but there is. And some people say it is, some people say it isn't, and you know, we have this debate constantly to this day. But I'm not going to dwell into it, but my take on it is a thing, because we still face oppression regardless. To be not LGBT, you basically have to literally be cisgender heterosexual, and that for us, we're not under that spectrum. So yes, we are a part of it. So we're not deemed as the norm. So there you go. Um, so basically it's a wide spectrum, and I'm also going to go into the idea of aromantic as well, because that literally gets almost no coverage whatsoever, and I feel as if that also deserves coverage. So it's a very, very wide spectrum. There's people who identify as different things within the community, and for instance, there's people who are very sex repulsed. They will not even go into the details. They don't want to think about having it. Say that friends are talking about it, they're like, no, 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 shut up, shut up, shut up, no, don't want this. I really, really do not want to get into a relationship, you know, etc. Um, and um, and then there's other people who kind of enjoy sex, but they just don't feel sexually attracted towards that particular individual. But at the same time, again, you know, you can enjoy sex and still be asexual. You know, that's totally a thing. Um, so there's that. And then there's people who say, for instance, who are okay with the idea of having of sex and that, you know, within the community, but they just don't really want it for themselves, and that's kind of like me. Like, you know, people can talk about it, and you can watch TV and you can read about it, and you're totally chill with it, but you just don't really want to partake in it. That's kind of like me. But um, then you know, then there's different things like within like different branches of asexuality. So, for instance, you get people who do have a sexual relationship with somebody, but only after a really, really close, deep connection with people. And those are demisexuals, for instance. And or demis, and that depending on how you want to identify that as. But you know, and then there's I'm trying to think now. Sorry, I've got a really, really, really sore throat today, so probably today was probably not the best idea to do this, but as I said, it's probably my only free day during the week, so might as well try and do it now. So yeah, you do get demisexuals, that's totally a thing, and then you get people who are asexual, whatever, but in a very rare circumstance, they do feel a little bit of sexual attraction towards a person. Now, how much of that is, and it's like only on a very rare chance that it may be like one in like God knows how many. And those are grey asexuals, or grey aces as we commonly know it, but each of them have their own flags. So what I will do is, when editing this, I will put the flag up of how people identify. So just in case, just, you know, a little bit of knowledge out there. And in vice versa, it's the same with aromantics. So basically, aromantics don't have romantic attraction towards people. They may desire them, like, you know, may have lust, but in terms of actually having a relationship with them, is like, no, 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 we don't want that. And basically, it's literally the flip side of asexuals. They can still maintain a close connection to people and like form relationships with people, like, so like really, really close friends, for instance, but in terms of actually going through a relationship with somebody, it's like, no, not for me. Again, like with demisexuals, you get demi-romantics. they only like feel like a really romantic like want to pursue a relationship, and have that romantic attraction towards somebody after knowing them for like a really long time, or like having this really, really close, deep personal connection with them. And then you also get some sort of grey romantics as well. Again, it's only a rare case where you'd find some sort of initial primary romantic attraction towards somebody. But again, that's like on a very, very rare case. And yeah, and then there's other identifications within this spectrum. Personally, I'm not as educated on that as I probably should be, but there are others as well. I mean, if you are watching this and you identify as something else within the spectrum, please put the comments down. It's a way for me to become more educated as well as everybody else, so it's all part of the learning process, and that is a term I really want to get out of my head. Okay, so like all sexualities, there's no correct age for when you identify as a particular sexuality, and the same goes for asexuality as well, or and that, or being an aromantic. There's no age at all. You identify when you identify, and it's totally an okay thing. Say, for instance, if you feel a particular sexuality and then later on you think, oh wait, hold on a minute, maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm this sexuality instead. And that, again, that's totally chill. You know, at the end of the day, we're our own people. We're still going through the motions of life, and sometimes we feel different to how we used to. And I went through the same thing, so again, that's totally okay. And again, we're all valid regardless. And if anyone tells you you're not valid, again, they can fling themselves into the sun. Again, there's no right or wrong, so only we can feel what we really feel. And I think I've stolen a quote from somewhere, but I can't tell you exactly where from, but I think I've just stolen a quote. I hope they don't mind. I'm going to talk about sort of asexuality and such within relationships. And probably this might be a little bit of a bizarre one for me because I haven't been in a relationship in like 10 years now, but again, that's just probably my own choice, to be fair. It's not really my thing, so forgive me if I sound like a bit of a dimwit on this, but this is me just looking at it from a sort of a secondary perspective, I guess. I think for me, more in terms of relationships, part of it's down to being scared for entering one, and we have our own reasons for that. It's more the fact of how people would react to my sexuality, and again, the point of this video is for me just to come up with my own personal things as well as for people to be educated on it. Again, totally chill. So yeah, unfortunately we're still oppressed. People usually are like, they sort of like go through the initial swing of things and they're totally chill and everything until they realise that you're asexual and they don't really know what it means. And so at first they're like, oh yeah, okay, that's totally chill. And then they want to pursue a sexual relationship. And say for those who enjoy sex and they like the person, that's totally fine, right? But say for those who are sex ripples or really don't want to partake in the thing, it's like, oh god, what do we do? And so for instance, we get through this point to where we get to a relationship, we don't want to pursue that thing, and then suddenly they don't really give a shit, and that's it, end of a relationship. And part of me is pretty scared of that because I'm usually constantly worried about how people will react to that, and because the idea of having sex is just so ingrained into our, so ingrained on us that we're constantly exposed to this from a pretty young age, and we grow up with this mindset that it's totally a thing within relationships, like it has to be done, and it doesn't. And then because everybody else is so exposed to it, when you kind of don't really want to, you don't feel comfortable going through that, people are just kind of like, well, sex is like a thing about a relationship. How can you have a relationship without it? And it's kind of constantly one of those tropes that we always get told. And it's okay not to have it. But yeah, it's a huge problem that we face. And to a point where, say, you don't want to go through that motion and you don't biologically have children, you get oppression from your own family as well, because they're like, oh my god, I'm not going to get grandkids, because you're like, you don't want to go through it. And sometimes you get forced through it. It's an absolutely horrible experience, but I've had people have been through that before. So yeah, oppression for us is absolutely insane. When people think, oh no, you're not really oppressed, but damn right we are. I think the idea is we need to do more to educate people on this. We really, really do. And it's the same with our romantic. We need much more education. We need more exposure and more scope on this. And I think people growing up, we really, really need to educate them on. I think the big key for relationships realistically is communication. And again, this is me from a secondary perspective, just seeing everybody around me in a relationship and that, and half the time it breaks down. Communication for me is a huge key. You need to be aware of what's on the table and what isn't, so I think that's a big part of it. And the idea, you need to respect that. Like, some people want things and some people don't, and maybe there can be like this balance that you need to work out, but again, I can't really dwell too much into that. But thinking about it in general, a friend of mine once, the one who kind of inspired me to do this, I remember she telling me that for me to enter a relationship and sustain one because of my sexuality, it would be incredibly difficult. And I think part of that's down to the fact that, again, it's just so, sex is so exposed to us that people don't think of anything different. But at the same time, I think it's down to a lack of education as well. Um, Sometimes I don't know whether she said what she said is because of the oppression, or sometimes because of how exposed things are, but it's not impossible. And we need to remember that there is hope for all of us, that we will find somebody. And even if you don't want to find somebody and you just want to be on your own and everything, again, that's totally chill. You shouldn't have to be forced to be in a relationship with somebody. Whether you are or not, that's a totally different thing. But you shouldn't have to be. At the end of the day, it's up to us. It should be up to us to make our own decisions for ourselves. So, again, that's just my stance on it. Okay, so I'm going to move on to my own personal story, because it's well talking about asexuality, aromanticism, and everything else in general without actually saying my side of the story. And I feel like maybe sharing my personal story might help other people. It may not. People may think, Jesus Christ, you need to, excuse my French on the Christianity thing, but you know, you really need to get over yourself. Whatever. But this is my kind of story of how I ended up identifying as how I do now. So basically, when I got to about 13, 14, growing up as a child, you kind of expected the idea that everybody's heterosexual or anything. Like, growing up, I never knew anybody who was gay. At all. Not even all the way through senior school. Beg to differ, until I was about 15, that was. Then that kind of started changing a little bit, but that was within my own sort of generation. Generations up from me, didn't know anybody at all. So I started feeling a little bit differently when I got to around about 13, 14. So just before I was transferring from my first senior school to my second, initially I didn't really care about entering a relationship with a guy, and I didn't think that was really my thing. Well, neither with a woman, to be fair. And but I started getting confused about how I identified, because I was like, well, at this stage everybody was entering relationships and already starting to blossom, and I just didn't really feel like doing that at all. And I thought maybe that was just down to my age, but I sort of thought of being sort of more attracted to a female than I was with a guy. And then I thought, oh, what about if I'm gay, you know? because I was aware of the idea of homosexuality and stuff, but I wasn't really exposed to it. But I started thinking that, so by the time I got to my second school, I thought I was in that confused stage, thinking, oh my god, what do I do? How do I identify if I know what to talk to? I'm confused as heck. And I know that was not because I was in an all-girls school for 3 years. Nothing to do with that, as some people may come out with. So not long after transferring, I kind of entered my first proper relationship. It was a bit on a whim, I must admit. I hadn't been there all that long. I think I'd only been there about 2 months. And I'd entered this relationship with a guy who was in the year above me. So he was in his final year of school, because we finished at 16 back then. And I was in year 10. And I think we went about a year, or just under a year. And I think it was difficult to begin with because we weren't in the same year group. That was always going to be a struggle because while we started school at the same time, we finished school at the same time. Obviously, we were in different classes, so the only times we actually saw each other were literally in between classes. So how I ended up with this geezer, I don't remember, but why I ended up with him, I don't remember. But I was a bit stupid, but you know, you do these things. Anyways, so initially the relationship was fine, and then as we were entering, I can't remember what year this would have been now. This would have been around about 2009-ish. As we were entering around about then, everything was totally chill, but then he wanted to explore the sexual side with me. And I'd heard of people afterwards that was a common thing with him, and that with his partners, he always wanted that sexual side. And for me, I was thinking I wasn't ready. I didn't think I'd ever be ready, to be fair, but at that stage I wasn't ready, and I said, look, I'm not ready for this, And I kept putting it off, and so I panicked, to be fair, and I thought, well, because it'd been so exposed to us, the idea of having sexual relationships, I thought, well, I'm a minor, so I can't anyway until at least I'm 16, so especially if he does it against my own will anyway. And at the same time, I thought, well, I'm not ready, I panicked thinking, oh my god, what's going to happen? And things I was comfortable with some things, and I was not comfortable with other stuff. So I identified that I was okay with sort of kissing and like having that intimacy, but just not the sexual part. And I think, to be fair, that's always been the case for me ever since. But anyway, so I kept putting it off, and it got to around about, oh god, I think it got to around about June-ish, and things were like, we were literally almost on the verge of being separate. And to be fair, I think probably getting out of it while I could was probably the best thing I could have done. But obviously at the time you don't really think that. And then we got to around about, I can't remember when we got. I remember I was away for a week up with my cousins, and I think this was towards the end of the school year. I really, really don't remember because my memory is a little bit now. But I mean, this was 10 years ago, so I'm trying to think actually. So anyway, it got to a stage where he was like, "Look, I'm going to give you an ultimatum. Either you have intercourse with me, or I'm splitting up with you." And then I was put in this really, really horrible position because I didn't want to go through the motions, but I still liked the guy and I still wanted to stay in a relationship with him. And I just personally, I just didn't know what to do. So I spoke to my aunt about it, because realistically I did not have anybody else there I could really speak to at the time. wasn't comfortable talking about it through with my uncle. All my cousins are younger than me, so it's not really worth talking through it to them. So I went to my aunt. And she said, literally, dump his ass. You know, if you're not comfortable with going through it, then it's not worth the bother. So I did. And and to be fair, it's probably the best choice I could have got at the end of it. Don't get me wrong, I was an emotional wreck over it, but at the end of the day, I just couldn't force myself through the torture. And I remember coming back, because I think it was the week of the swine flu incident. I could be wrong, but I remember going back to school on the Monday, and there was this massive bus stop between us, and I didn't want it to get that badly out of hand. And I remember the other horrible part of the ultimatum was the fact that if I didn't go through the motions, not only would he break up with me, but he'd exploit me for who I was. And I was not ready to come out at that stage because, again, I had no idea how I identified. And there was no one at school I could really talk to either, because education and awareness was absolutely dismal. Was it literally abysmal during that point? But so in the finish, there was this massive fight at school, and to be fair, it was the best decision I ever made because then I was a lot more sure about myself. He could move on and whatnot, he could date other people, and I could move on and try and get through school without any other further problems. And then he decided that I can't remember what he actually said, to be fair, but I remember he didn't actually expose me as not wanting sex in the first place. But I can't remember exactly how and that. But I do remember, I think it was somebody. I remember there was this rumour that went around school about me saying that I was gay, and I think it might have been him. Or it might have been somebody else. I'm not entirely sure. But I remember this rumour going around school that when I got to my final year, and I received so many homophobic comments over it, and and it was that stage where I thought, well, there's no way I'm gonna survive this. But I got through school, and it was only when I got to the end of school that I started being a bit more sure about myself, and I went to Google because I didn't have the internet at home back then. So off to the library, googling away, and that's when I came across the idea of asexuality to begin with, and and so uh, and so yeah, that basically happened. And then by the time I got to around about 17, 18, I was a lot more sure of who I was. But then I thought I was definitely more. I didn't really want the idea of having sexual intimacy with people, but I still liked guys and girls. So I was like, oh, I must be like bi-romantic or something like that. And of course, that slightly changed to pan afterwards, um, but yeah, but I wasn't. By the time, even when I got to university, I wasn't entirely out of the closet anyway. But then by the time I got to around about 19, 20, then I fully came out. Came out first to my nan, she was totally chill with it, and then my sister, she was totally chill with it as well. But again, despite all that, some people were supportive and some people weren't, and at the end of the day, I knew growing up that life was going to be incredibly difficult, and even at school, with all those homophobic comments, I knew I wasn't gay, and it was at that stage where I knew I wasn't gay then, because I actually had this sort of attraction towards a couple of people. For one, my past tutor and my geography teacher, a little bit. I'm just in it, just tiny little bit, but they were both guys, so I believe one was actually LGBT themselves. That made things a bit easier, but um, There was also a rumour around that I remember my geography teacher and myself was in a relationship because of all the special treatment. And that obviously totally wasn't the case. And then they thought that my maths tutor and I were also in the same boat. So I was like, how can I be gay if I'm supposed to be in a relationship with them, pet? You know, doesn't work. Well, I ended up in a relationship when I was about another couple when I was finishing school, going into college, and those didn't really last long. And I haven't been in a relationship since, and that's just in a way, that's just my choice. Even when somebody tries and flirts with me, I'm just really uncomfortable about it, thinking, oh my god. Because there isn't that initial romantic attraction. That romantic attraction only comes in later once you've got to know the person. But um, and like where there's sexual attraction when you see people and you're just like, damn, you know, that doesn't happen for me. So yeah, things work a little bit different. So the thing is, I haven't been in a relationship since, and again, it's the fear of entering one because of I'm not sure how they would accept it. But I'm also content with the idea of not being in one. Um, I don't need to force myself into one, and neither should anybody else. If you feel okay being the way you are, then carry on being the way you are. You may get pressured, of course, but by family, but at the end of the day, get yourselves out of there while you can. That's my way of saying it. It's not easy, may not always be impossible, but at the end of the day, we can only try and help ourselves as much as possible. You do it when you feel right, and yeah, there is life isn't all butterflies and rainbows, and we do have problems. But at the end of the day, hopefully, as time passes on, and people become more educated, hopefully that will start to change and people will start to recognise that not everybody's the same. You know, we're all equal, but we just feel different things. We just identify differently, and hopefully in future years people will start to recognise that, or at least properly. So yeah, so basically that's just me in general. That's just my little talk on it. Initially I tried to do one beforehand, but it got to like 50 odd minutes, and I thought, no way, I'm going to spend that long talking. So I've tried to redo it, and I managed to get it down to about 30, which is a lot better, to be honest. So that's just my little talk on asexuality and stuff in general. If there's other things you want me to talk about, then feel free to drop it in the comments. If you've got any questions at all, again, or need any advice, I will try and advise you as best as I can and stuff. So again, if you want to ask me anything, then feel free to drop it in the comments. If you need advice on something, again, drop it in the comments. I will try and answer them as best as I can, or I will try and answer everybody as well. And depending on how many people do ask me stuff or whatnot, then maybe I can try and do a video where everybody's asked me questions, and I could do maybe a Q&A. I don't know how to do a live stream yet because I've never done one, but maybe in the future I could try and do one. And we can go from there, I guess. So feel free to drop anything down, unless it's absolutely abusive, and that then I will delete your comment, um, and basically you can fling yourself towards the sun. Even if you're curious yourself, or you're confused yourself, or maybe you know somebody who's in that situation. Maybe you're a parent, and it doesn't necessarily have to be just on asexuality and aromanticism. Maybe it could just be the idea of LGBT in general. Um, Feel free to drop it down, and I will try and advise everybody as best as I can. Um, so um, so yeah, basically that's my little talk on it. I hope that helps, and maybe, hopefully, me blithering on about stuff for about 35 minutes has probably helped and not just been a total waste of time. Again, sorry for the light. Hopefully we might get some more sunny days as time goes along, but unfortunately it's a very, very dull day outside, and unfortunately there's a bunch of trees outside which tend to block whatever light we've got, and my light is incredibly dim, so it doesn't help. So hopefully this doesn't come out as bad as I thought it probably will be, but hopefully you can hear me, so that's the main part to it. So yeah, from here on, I'm not really sure what I'm doing. Things will just come up. Again, it's mostly a Eurovision channel, so if you're really, really not into that, probably it may not be for you. But regardless though, this is the video and this is what I've done. So take care of yourselves, guys, and hopefully I will see you soon.